President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima yesterday met with President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and some state governors as part of efforts to cushion the effects of the petrol subsidy removal on the population. The meeting was part of the President's continued consultation with key players on how to get the economy on a sound footing. The meeting held in the office of the President at the State House, Abuja, and it was attended by some state governors, including those of Imo, Senator Hope Uzodinma, Kwara, Abdurrahman Abdurazak, Lagos, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and Ogun, Prince Dapo Abiodun. Former Governor Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano State was also part of the meeting. Speaking to newsmen on the essence of the meeting, Presidential Advisor on Special Duties, Communications and Strategy, Dele Alaki, said the meeting with the President also looked at how to finalize arrangements on the distribution of palliatives to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. Also, the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum said that there is no division or crisis in the governing or Progressive Congress Party. Hope Uzodinma made the comment after the meeting with APC governors in Abuja.
Days after the governing All Progressives Congress announced the resignation of its national chairman, Abdullahi Adamu, and its national secretary, Iyola Omishore, members of the Progressives Governors Forum meet in Abuja. It's a closed-door meeting which lasted for more than 3 hours and had in attendance Imo State Governor and Chairman of the Progressives Governors Forum, Hope Uzodinma, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the Yobe State Governor, and many others. The governors discussed critical issues affecting party following the exit of its former national chairman and its former secretary, paving the way for the emergence of the deputy national chairman, Senator Abubakar Kyari, as the party's acting national chairman, and Festus Funtua as the acting national secretary, in line with the party's constitution.
You must have heard of the resignation of the national chairman of our party and the national secretary of the party. Those are voluntary actions that have been taken, and with due respect to our former national chairman and secretary, we commended the wisdom in what they have done, and they served us well in the party. We are happy with their services, and the party is united. There's no crisis in the party. They are happy. We also are happy. So we are in support of their actions, and we will continue to commend and respect and recognize the services they have rendered to our great party.
On subsidy removal, hike in petrol prices, and the rise in the cost of living across the country, Governor Uzodinma assures Nigerians that the government is intensifying efforts in alleviating their plight.
We are aware that the result of the removal of petroleum subsidy will increase the volume of money that will be received by us during the Federation account meeting. And we are working with federal government to ensure that the proceeds of that fact will be utilized in a manner that the citizens of the country are happy, the labor happy, we also, the practitioners happy, and also the economy of the country will be protected. Our economic managers supported to ensure that our solvency margin is not tampered with in the international market. Instead, it will be improved upon. So what has happened is something that we should be happy about. The current hardship occasioned by the price increase on both food, petroleum products, and cost of living is being addressed.
Joining us now on this show is Professor Anthony Kila, a professor of strategy and development and an institute director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies. He'll be discussing the possible projection of the Palliatives meeting in Abuja and what Nigerians should likely expect in the coming days as President Tinubu continues with policies that will revive the country's economy. Good morning, Professor Anthony Kila. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good to be here.
Yeah, Professor Kila, well, all of a sudden, we're told that the federal government is meeting with the subnationals, the governors from various states, to discuss palliatives. Today, the National Economic Council meeting is also going to hold to focus also on the same problem. But many Nigerians were saying that from the point of view of strategy, which is your area, why are we having the meeting about palliatives, about how to go about it, how to coordinate it after the fact? Whereas, you know, this is something that could have been done a priori, not a posteriori. How is that in terms of imagination, innovation?
Well, the short answer to it is bad. I mean, it's a good thing that the head of the federal government is meeting head of the state government. You know, that's good optics. The problem is the timing. You don't meet to decide what to do after the problem is there. In terms of strategy, you tend to meet before, you consult before action. It is my view that this meeting should have been held way before the subsidy itself, the removal was implemented. So the situation in the country now is high energy prices, high cost of living due to these energy prices, and also the de facto devaluation of the naira. Now, you see, what this tells us is that governance is not an experiment. The reason why during election people talk about experience and vision and plan is to avoid a situation in which things are done, then we run helter-skelter after the effect of the thing. Rational thinking, or generally, or strategic thinking, to be precise, teaches us that we sit down to plan what we're doing and we consider various scenarios before we choose an option, knowing fully well that if we take option A, the consequences are likely to be consequences of option A. If we take option B, the consequences will be option B consequences. So therefore, we choose one option, not the other. It is evident now that the president has decided to review the announced distribution of money as palliatives. Now they're going to think what they should be doing about it. You rightly notice, most Nigerians are right, this thing should have been done before. And you see, and whilst we're at it, bad governance is not just bad for our pocket and our economy. It's also bad for our psychic, our morality, and our intellectual state of mind, our intellectual state generally. Now, the whole of Nigeria is using this word palliative, and we're talking about it and we expect it, and we're expecting it. Can I just say to the world that the word palliative is a horrible word? Palliative is something that has to do with terminal diseases. It is something that is used to solve a problem, to reduce the pain of a problem, not to solve it. Most people under palliative care tend to die at the end of it. And we're just throwing this word around. Maybe we should have a rethink of that as well.
All right, okay. So that palliative, as you've mentioned, can be said to be dealing with the cause of the condition without actually dealing with the condition itself, like you've said. And you're not the only one who's opining that perhaps we should stop using that word palliative so we can have a true picture of what the government ought to be doing to respond to these issues. But let me talk about what the solution should then look like. The president is meeting with the governors. What should be on the agenda? 8,000 naira had been proposed earlier, which has been withdrawn now in terms of a form of, I use the word palliative in this case, for 12 million households in Nigeria. Having reviewed this with responses from a number of people and analysts, the president has said they would review that. What should be on the agenda? What kind of conversations should be had? And what should the outcome look like?
Well, it is my view that what should be agenda should be saying, let us find local solution to a national problem. So we need to look at the 36 units of the Federation and say to them, how do we solve this problem bottom up instead of up down? So what we should be saying is this, instead of waiting for the federal, so let us look at the chronicles, let's diagnose the situation we have. We have high cost of energy, which means people are spending most Nigerians are spending about half of their salaries to get to work. we have increase in prices because of the devaluation of the naira, which means everything is going to cost more because we import most of the things. So the way, in my view, what we need to do is to call the 36 units together and say, each one of you, how are you going to solve this problem from bottom up, not from the federal government? So each state, I argue, for example, that what we need is to crash the price of transportation by increasing the supply of transportation, by modifying the components of the demand of transportation costs. A good example would be increase in public transportation so that less people are using private cars. That, in my estimation, will require 10,000 buses across Nigeria. That is an average of about 12.5, I guess, per local government. Some local government, monolithic government like Efanla Ekiti, or some part of Sokoto, for example, will require just 2 or 3. That will cover them. Some areas in Lagos State, I think of Alimosho, I think of Verali Gunle, will require more buses per local government. So if we spread out 10,000 buses, it will cover everybody to have enough. Make them safe, make them clean, so that every class of society can use them instead of cars. Now, this should not be done by a single check from the federal government. Each state should look at themselves and say, I am providing X amount of these buses, and it will be for my state in my local government. That's what needs to be done. The other thing that needs to be done, and I think some people are doing it, but we need to intensify it, is to know that the way the cost of petrol is going is unsustainable. So we need to move towards using gas, and we need to do it very quickly. Doing it quickly is what the state can help do, so that the state will say it's a priority now to make sure we have gas filling stations, gas conversion companies doing on. What do we need to do? We need to find those people who are already in that business already and quickly support them to expand. Then we need to quickly train more people to be able to convert petrol cars into gas cars. So that if we do that again, I estimate we need about 3,500 is the projection I've done, gas conversion stations around the country, which will go around the local government. We need to think in terms of reducing queues and chaos. Now, if individuals, and by the way, I say this knowing that it is possible for the state to do it themselves, it is possible for private individuals to do it. My take is that it should be private company-led. The state should energize them, boost them, and regulate to make sure that it's quality, but not in a way to hinder. We should know that we have an emergency at hand, so let's do it very quickly. Let's not ask for very complicated things. Let's simplify the process, and that's very quickly. And then we open our institutions. I mean, I'm showing my center, CRC there. We are training people in production management that can convert gas in a period of about 10 weeks. But I'm sure if the state signs that, then people will be ready to do it in about 6 weeks very quickly. These are the quick things that needs to be done. We need to vary the kind of demand we have so that we're looking inwards for this demand. Those are the quick steps we need to take. But there's another issue, which is a sort of moral symbolic issue, which we also need to raise. We cannot have the country groaning in poverty and lack of money, and you have those leading them, i.e. the legislators, for example, asking for new cars and raising that kind of money. It's a kind of scenario of beggars in tuxedo. The servicemen, the church is poor, but the priests are rich. That's a bad situation. So we need both tangible economic moves and symbolic, moralistic, or populist move, if you want.
Okay, real quickly. It's also a conversation I've not heard we put forward. And like you said, palliatives are people that probably, it's not sustainable because it's for people that are well on their way out and it doesn't really do anything in the end. Have we thought of having due conversations about our energy mix? In other nations of the world, their energy mix. Take, for instance, Germany. I know how much solar Germany uses, and I know how much other sources of energy. But in Nigeria, we've not had that conversation. And we have other energy sources. We've got coal that we've pretty much abandoned since the Ivor Valley days, probably the Ivor Valley massacre days. We've got gas that we flare and we waste, but can actually transform our economy. We've not done anything as regards gas. Then we've got other sources of energies we're not even tapped at all. So is there like a conversation about the possibility of even an energy mix bill, so we can, pretty much take a cursory look at the energy sources we have and how we can use that to grow our economy.
This is the time to have that conversation, and we should have had it. We should have had it before now. But I think now we need to. You know, it was a desire, it was a desirable thing to have done before. Now it is an essential thing for our survival. We need to diversify these. But you rightly said, you know, the starting point is data. We need to be able to, at the click of a button, know how much energy we need per day. And when I say energy, I include petrol, I include electricity, I include everything, I include glass, to know that let us assume that we need 1x, you know, X amount of energy in a country. You know, for people who don't like the XY thing because they had bad maths teachers. Let's say 1,000. Let's say we need 1,000 units of energy. We need to know inside that 1,000 unit of energy, as a country, I'm talking, not as individuals, we need to know how much of it is petrol, how much is it diesel, how much is gas, how much is electricity. Then we need to do a calculation to say, of this total energy we have, how much can we generate from solar? How much can we generate using gas? We're not talking windmill here, which we should be looking at. A country like Nigeria, and those who know me, those who listen to me or read me will know that I don't dwell on our natural resources, because for me, natural resources is, you know, is nothing. What matters is human resources. But for a country like Nigeria that has so much natural resources, I laugh at myself because I'm saying it now. With so much natural resources, we should be the capital of development of diverse energy, not to be angry that some countries do not want to use our crude oil anymore. Because we have the sun, we have the stars, we have the gas, we have everything. Our learning centers, aided by government and encouraged by private sector, should be the centers where people are building solar energy, gas power, because you can use it. You know, I speak to people in other countries, and they don't have enough sun as we do, but yes, they're leading in alternative energy. We should be leading that. We should be using our human development to analyze our natural resources, join them with our problems, and come up with solutions that will not only solve our need, but will also generate income for us.
Well, Professor Kila, let me ask you about another issue. It's about the composition of the president's cabinet. Beyond palliatives, many Nigerians are saying, well, the president from this moment has up to just about 10 days left, going by the law, the fifth alteration of the 1999 Constitution with regard to the time limit for the appointment of ministers. And people are saying, look, certain kinds of persons should not be seen in that cabinet, even if the president has powers under Section 5, executive powers of the Federation, to choose whoever will work with him. What kind of cabinet would you like to see? Some people say they don't want geriatrics. Some people say they don't want failed governors who just want to be relevant. Some people say they want a cabinet of technocrats and young people, not a cabinet of IOUs. We're told that there's already a list flying around. Some people are even writing themselves into that list. What do you think Nigeria needs at this point?
I saw one list with your name, Dr. Abati.
You said what?
I saw one list with your name on it.
Okay.
So let me just say something, you know, lest we are accused of what we accuse others of doing. Let me say I'm surprised and slightly disappointed that this president has not presented his list yet, because one of the biggest flaws of the one that left, that one that's gone to Daura now, one of the biggest flaws is that he's delayed the thing. I would have thought that this new government, given what happened last time, would have really presented his list way before, saving time, not 10 days to the deadline. It's not good optics, you know, let's just say. It's not a big deal, but, you know, it is there and it needs to be said. I also think that the president is a very political person. This is perhaps the most political president Nigeria has ever had. And I say this from the time of 79, when we had, from the time we forayed into the presidential system. This is a president that has been in politics, in the forefront of politics, He has made elections happen. And as he said himself, being president is a lifelong held ambition for him. So I don't think he would have confusion in how to set up his cabinet. He has 3 areas to look at in cabinet making, like every president in Nigeria. One is a constitutional demand of each state being represented. So that is a fixed element, not a variable element he has to deal with. The second one is a political thing of those that have worked with him, those who know, those who are part of his team, that got him into power, that supported him. The third element is competence. This is where people talk about technocrats. Let me say that popular idea that people say, oh, let him be technocrat thing. I don't really buy it because, everybody's a technocrat in one way or the other. They have their qualification, whether they are forged or real. They parade themselves as accountants and lawyers. Whether they are brilliant or not is another issue. On paper, they all have qualifications, so anybody could be there.
Professor Kila, sorry to interject.
Yes. So you see, that would be a technocrat in his own world as well. I think the president needs to manage efficiency and inclusion. That is what he needs to manage. The idea, of people are putting a lot of things. So we are dealing with age, ethnic group, religious things to manage. If I were president, I wouldn't bother about all those things at all. I would just focus on the people who are going to make the job happen for me. And then I would defend it because I would say I have the courage to take decisions. In other systems, the moment of deciding your cabinet is what we call in politics the golden solitude of the bowling of leadership. That is when you look inside yourself and you say, these are the people who are going to work with me. But the reality shouldn't be that way, because on the way to the presidency, whilst they were writing the programs, while they were doing the idea, if they've done the right thing, they should have an idea already who's going to run, who's going to manage the economy with them. There will be about less than 20% of people that will be headhunted, to look at them and say, I see this person, this man or woman, and I think she can handle this technical side for us. That is where we ought to go. And But one thing that should be said is this: the cabinet is going to say a lot about the kind of president you have. It's going to reveal his character, his judgment, his moral view of life, and what he thinks is right or wrong for the country. Some optics are going to matter as well about that. If you choose somebody who's known to be a dullard, a drunkard, or sleepy, it tells us you don't care about personal qualities. If you go for people who are known to be brainy, then it tells us that you care about intellect. So the cabinet is an index of the kind of governance you expect from a government. And the burden is on the president. There's no bother. You're right, the Constitution gives the faculty to choose who you can work with, but it's also a burden on you, because you can't then come back to say later, this person was forced on me. No. You have to look at it in a very lucid way and take responsibility for whoever you choose. I have said elsewhere, and I'd like to repeat it, that it would be good as a step forward that when they bring out the list of cabinet, they should put their portfolios assigned to them as well. The Constitution does not require it, but I think it would be a good innovation.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Professor Kila, I'd like you to just take a little deeper look into some of the policies, announcements of the president since he got sworn in on the 29th of May. I ask because a number of people have described President Bola Tinubu as hitting the ground running. He's made, some decisions that previous administrations have been loath to do. The fuel subsidy removal, the announcement of the student loan, the floating of the naira, and a few other things. But even in that, there are criticisms that perhaps they're just sound bites. They're just announcements to make people excited. But when you look at the substance of it, he comes in almost ill-prepared. One, we've just talked about the ministerial list, the fact that 50 days into his administration, we don't have a list of ministers when we would have thought he had his men already, picked out. Number two, the fuel subsidy removal. The criticism is that whilst it was a good move, it was well planned. We're now having conversations 2 months after about palliatives, meeting with governors. Too late. The student loan, great on paper, but implementation, again, there are rough edges around that. So a number of good policies, but implementation seems not very well thought out. And this is perhaps also an indication that is this how his administration will run in terms of announcements and then not well thought out. And so policies come out and they are almost, problematic on arrival. Give us your analysis of the first 2 months of the president.
Yes, I think the risk is there. I think the administration came in fighting two shadows or two sets of criticism. One is to prove that they were better than the other one, the one that was called Baba Go Slow. The last administration was so slow, wasn't doing things. So I think this administration came in with a clear determination that they can do things, and that's important for them. The other element they were trying to prove is to show people who were criticizing the president that he was not fit to rule, to take decisions, to show them that he could roll out things immediately. So that is a good thing. That's an intention to show that I'm on top of the game, I have plans, and I know what to do once we get there. The famous expression, hit the ground running, that's the element of hit the ground running. The problem is once you hit the ground running, where are you running to? Are you running to the right direction or to the wrong direction? And therein lies the policy, the essence of policy and process. It appears that the government so far is being led by the communication department. I say this because most of what they've done seems to be governance by headline. They're grabbing headlines, saying student loan, we remove this, we do that. That is great, that is good intention. The problem now is when you go into the practice of it, because you say ideally, when you say we're introducing student loan, you ought to say, today we're introducing student loan, and by the 10th day of the month or by the 20th day of the month, there will be 500 offices in Nigeria where you can go and do student loan, or this is a website to apply for the student loan. That is what you call policy announcement and policy implementation. And government, not individuals, you can call your family to say, we're going to buy a car next year, let's pray about it. But if you're in government, before you announce something, you have to think it through and to say, this is how we're going to implement it. It's not a general debate. It's not, it's not an association where people sit down and they have an agenda and they talk. If you're in government, you think it through before you announce it, and you do. That is missing. The idea of announcing 8,000 naira gift or money to people and reverse it in such a short time is also an indication that the plan is not well thought through. Maybe the president needs to quickly appoint more people in his team so that they can start working. Contrary to what we do in Nigeria, what we've done in the past administration, you don't actually have to announce the whole list of cabinet at one time. You can do them in batches if you're having a problem. Roll them out 3, 4 at a time so that they can start to work. Although that said, that permanent secretaries, you could work with them as well. It's just that it's good to have political heads that share your policy and vision, while the permanent secretaries and the whole of the ministry would deal with the administrative, legal, and technical issues. To that extent, I think the fact that the president hasn't got a full team yet is reflecting on the government's intention. So I believe the government needs to become more robust and start acting. If we are to deal with just what has been said in the past 7 to 8 weeks, it's going to take us about 7 months to implement those things that we've said already. Okay. So maybe, it's time we get people to start doing it.
I mean, when you said hit the ground running, what came to my mind was how people used to come down from Molue buses back in the days in Lagos. You literally hit the ground running. Molue never stops. So when you drop from a Molue bus, you need to run. That's hit the ground running. I'd like to ask you a question. Do you think there's been any rigor in the thinking as regards this government? That's number one. And it's a critical question.
Well, this critical question you asked me, I have to say no, there is none, because I teach strategy. If you want to write a strategy paper on what you do in an office, and you don't show me the scenarios that are likely to occur and what you're going to do about it, I'm not going to pass your paper. And if I, as a consultant, came to you as a policy consultant for you, and I showed you that this is the option you should take, and I don't show you the scenarios that might come from that option and what you're going to do to curb it, I don't think you'll be happy to pay me. So in terms of rigor, I think no. I cannot in knowledge and conscience say there is rigor. It shows, so at the moment, let's put it this way, the government is high on intention, but low on substance.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Anthony Kila. It's been good speaking with you this morning, and we look forward to the unveiling of the ministerial lists that a number of us have been looking forward to seeing. Thank you.